It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's an agentic workflow. It's a tool call. It's a WebSocket. No, it's an agentic workflow. That's right, folks. AI is eating the hearts and minds of those in Silicon Valley, and we are perhaps one or two more cursor for X's away from the techno-capital singularity. From the machine god to the GPT wrappers, to the AGI timelines, to the EACs versus EAs, to the hypergrowth curves, to the infinite scroll slot machines, to literally everything being an agentic workflow, we are in the thick of yet another technology hype cycle, and it is coming at us harder than Randy did all over his computer in that episode of South Park. Unlike previous hype cycles, we are more online than ever. Unlike previous hype cycles, we are more afraid of the permanent underclass than ever. And unlike previous hype cycles, we have more companies being propped up by Instagram Reels and their teenage videographers than ever. We will cover all of this and how we got here, what it is like being boots on the ground in the epicenter of the AI hype cycle, whether or not we're in a bubble, boring, or asking people for their AGI timelines at parties, and I will be interviewing our God King, Sam Hogan, founder of Inference.net and sponsor of our silly little show. This is the kind of analysis you'll get from us, the members of the technical staff. So, Madison, I have one question for you, and that is, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the words agentic workflow? It's very, very important.
I have no idea anymore. No idea. Completely lost at this point.
No
What could it
one
be?
knows what it
Yeah.
means. And I refuse to believe that anybody actually knows what it means. It's just like, we could have thought of this as maybe like a Selenium web scraper, some little thing that you set up in your terminal with Python, or like a little Minecraft bot, right? A little script that plays Minecraft for you. Maybe if you were to extrapolate completely, maybe an agentic workflow was a linear regression. Now the AI ML guys are going to get absolutely at me after saying that, but the whole point is that nobody knows what it is. Now, it's just LLMs doing stuff. Maybe it's little guys in our computers that are just doing stuff, right? But at the end of the day, it's LLMs. It might be tool calls. No one knows. All of the things that I listed could be an agentic workflow. Everything is AI agents now, right?
If the definition is just something that does things autonomously, then what does this mean? Like my Roomba is a agentic workflow. My coffee maker is an agentic workflow. Like we've actually had AGI since 2002. Like what does this actually mean?
Roomba AGI is crazy. But it's awesome. It's awesome. My little vacuum is actually just an agentic workflow, right? My relationship with my imaginary girlfriend, that's actually an agentic workflow. Or maybe it's actually a manual workflow that needs to be automated. In my case, I've probably automated it already. And so this brings me to the AI hype cycle. Now, of course, we are at the agentic workflow point of the AI hype cycle. Everyone's got an agent company. Everybody is raising for an agent company. But of course, if we take a step back, there's been many of these buzzwords that have come out of this particular hype cycle, right? If we go back to 2022, right, the release of ChatGPT, with stuff like prompt engineering. You remember prompt engineering?
Yes, barely.
Who even says that anymore? I haven't heard anybody say prompt engineering for like probably a year, maybe longer, but that was all the rage, right? It's like learn to prompt, right?
Yeah.
Don't learn to code, learn to prompt.
Yeah, you'd see these like really high paying jobs supposedly, and it's like become a prompt engineer, take my course on prompt engineering, and you're gonna make $500,000 as a prompt engineer.
Imagine what I wouldn't give. It's like we had prompt engineering, and then we kind of had like GPT wrappers. Remember, no one says GPT wrapper anymore either. Do you remember this?
Yeah. Yeah. So you think agentic workflows are the new ChatGPT wrapper?
Yes, I'm just going to go ahead and say absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Agentic workflow, the new GPT wrapper. I mean, I think we're going to get to the point in which, kind of like we did with GPT wrapper, in which it sort of becomes a slur, right? It's like, oh, you're just working on a GPT wrappers. we sort of saw it as a slur.
Yeah, but we have to be careful not to underestimate some of these, because some of these GPT wrappers did so well. I remember when Cursor was starting out and everyone was like, oh my gosh, they just cloned something, and people were laughing at them. And then Cursor just ends up laughing all the way to the bank. Like they're doing quite well. And so I almost don't want to underestimate some of these agentic workflows because I'm not sure. Yeah. How do you feel about this?
I mean, this is right, of course, but I'm still gonna call them slurs, right? I mean, if I didn't get to sell secondaries in Cursor's rounds, then of course I'm gonna be against it, right? If you're
Yeah.
not with me, you're against me, right? So this is just how it is. Everything's zero sum. I get to sit from my little goon cave here with the lights off and a light right in front of me, podcasting with my friends, and I get to call them the equivalent of technology slurs, right? We got GPT wrappers, we have agentic workflows, right? Everybody's building one of
Yeah.
these, and so like if I'm continuing down the timeline, right? So we've kind of
Mhm.
covered. Well, we've covered prompt engineering, GPT wrappers. No one's heard of these things for quite a while now. If we were to continue down this route, right? If we go to 2023, I feel like that was sort of like peak, oh no, we're all being automated in the next 6 to 12 months. That's
Yeah.
kind of how I recall it, right? Being a student of the timeline, right? That felt like peak automation freak out, right? Peak job loss freak out, peak permanent underclass freak out. I don't know, do you like how do you
Yeah.
recall 2023?
Absolutely. I feel like that has carried into this year as well. Just this peak, like it's over, doomerism. But I do feel like recently there is this narrative, and I want your thoughts on like how true this is. But there is this narrative on LLM slowing down and people are feeling a bit more safe. I work as a software engineer. Software engineers are feeling better right now. They're feeling less like their entire job is going to be automated away. At least that seems like the current narrative. Of course, some people are pushing back against that, but I'm curious your thoughts on that.
I mean, we are simply empowered or something, right? It's like,
Mhm.
and you had this discourse for the last couple of years where it's like, oh, the 10x engineer with the power of AI is going to be 100x, and right, and you just need to learn how to code using AI, and you too can become a 10x. And the reality is, it's just that skill gap is just kind of widening, right? It's like
Yeah.
turns out if you just know how to do the thing, and you can get AI to do the thing and help you do the thing better. But at the end of the day, you still need to know how to do the thing. And I think that's what a lot of that
Yeah.
discourse in sort of like 2023, it's like, oh no, you don't learn to code anymore. It's fucking over. I think that's what that really missed out on. Of course, yeah, kind of like what you mentioned, right? It's like it feels like we're in the flat part of the S curve, right? That's how it feels. Of course, we are here in San Francisco. We know that incredible advancements are being made every week at this stage. Of course, last week was Sora 2. Pretty incredible technology, pretty incredible slop. Like that we can get into that in a whole other. We could spend an entire show talking about an AI generated short form slop feeds. But that's not for this one. Some other podcast can take care of that this week. But it does sort of bring me to the whole discourse around the permanent underclass. you know,
Yeah.
peak job loss hype. And so that's sort of like the idea of the permanent underclass came about. And so I want to get into a post here from Cyan, right? So near Cyan, friend of the show, like a lot of the posts that we react to, they're going to be friends of the show. So near Cyan says, "Oh, husband, you never bought any Nvidia stock. Now we be a part of the permanent underclass forever." And of course, you have the picture of the Asian woman. She's covered in snow here. It's been photoshopped like in front of the futuristic image, right? So you can sort of Google futuristic images, and this particular image will show up first on Google Images, and it's got the Nvidia logo all in the background. Of course, this was from 2024. Of course, by this
Mhm.
time, Nvidia was just absolutely rocketing, and still is. So if you haven't bought Nvidia, welcome to the permanent underclass.
Yeah. This one hurts. This is too accurate, right?
Yeah, it hurts quite a bit. And so this idea of the permanent underclass was born, of course, if we want to sort of talk about the whole 2 years to the permanent underclass. And so I'm going to get to a post here from Nemo. So 2 years from the permanent underclass. Of course, this idea stems from Leopold Aschenbrenner's situational awareness, in which he talks about AGI 2027, right?
Yeah.
Friend of ours, actually. Mutual friend, Leopold. Really, really nice guy. And basically, what Nemo goes ahead and says, he says, Breaking Bad, but instead of cancer, he just knows he has only 2 years to accumulate capital and escape being part of the permanent underclass.
Okay, I want
So,
to ask you about this because I do feel like
yeah.
being here in SF and so enmeshed in the culture, I do feel like this is a real feeling here. It's a very quite palpable that a lot of, not everyone, but there's definitely a group of people who absolutely believe this and are rushing and working hard 996 like according to this. Would you agree with that, or what do you think?
Of course. Yeah, I think there's definitely a mindset, right? We've kind of switched from there are many people that have switched from missionary to mercenary, right? And I think it kind of, to me, it stems from, part of it's like the hyper growth curves, right? It's like, okay, well, if I'm going to go ahead and raise money for a startup and truly be a missionary, I have such gigantic expectations, right? We have companies going from 0 to 100 mil ARR in 2 years now versus, 7 years for your average cloud company. And so this sort of thing, it may turn some people off of actually starting a company. Now, of course, with these hyper growth valuations, right, you have a lot of companies paying quite a bit. And so there brings on the mercenaries, right? If you can just lock in one of those cushy tech jobs, might be at a lab, might be at a hyper-growth startup, you can lock in 3 to 500K a year as a great engineer. If you're going to be automated in, say, 3, 5, 7, 10 years, well, you're on 3 to 500K a year. Maybe that is enough to escape the permanent underclass. And so, yeah, to your question, I think this is exactly the mindset a lot of people have. Of course, various researchers that we know and are friends with, they will say different things about their various timelines. But it's sort
Yeah.
of this thing. It is definitely a thing. And so with this, I want to quickly get on, before we move on to the interview with Sam, I want to quickly get into the discourse, right? The discourse in
Mhm.
2025. What is it like being in San Francisco in 2025, the epicenter of the AI hype cycle? What is it like being here when all people want to talk about at parties and on dates are AGI timelines? What is happening here?
I mean, it's incredibly exciting and optimistic and wonderful here. And I feel like SF has such main character energy. I mean, especially if you work in tech, it feels like SF is at the center of everything. And whenever I'm anywhere else, I have such FOMO. Like it just feels like SF is the center of the universe if you're in tech, in the AI space. Genuinely, that's how it feels for one thing.
I mean, yeah, some famous guy actually said this. Well, some famous online guy actually
Who,
said this.
you?
No, Rune did actually. Rune did. This is
Oh, Rune, yeah.
yeah. You think I have any original content? No, it's just
I'm
Rune
just copying
ripoffs.
all of Rune's talking points. Have him up here, actually. I was reading it off.
Yeah,
I didn't know he
yeah.
said
No
I
one.
missed that one.
Yeah, the elites don't want you to know that the Mott's podcast is actually just a vibe reel of Rune's greatest hits, and we're just sort of extrapolating them to make money. And so that is thing. No, of course, I can go to any random party and that conversation is going to come up. Of course, in my particular dating pool, i.e., none, that topic tends to not really come up. But
Mhm.
yeah, it sort of goes
Really?
along with the whole sort of. No, I don't think, yeah, I've had nobody ask me for my AGI timelines. Like I said,
Goodness.
no
I'm so
dating pool, not.
surprised. That would
I've not
not
felt
make
the
that would
touch of a
not make
woman in
dating.
8 years. Yeah, yeah. Each to their own is all I'll say. But the party thing, of course, it's like AGI timelines. What's your signal, right?
Yeah.
We need to be private. We need to not, there was also the discourse around the whole like Chinese spies, right? It's like releasing
Yeah.
production secrets and AGI secrets to beautiful Chinese women at parties.
Yeah. I mean, this is a quite, I think people who don't live in San Francisco think this is a joke that you see online, but there are absolutely various spies here. Like, I can't, like, how could you not think this is a true thing? This is absolutely real.
There you have it, folks. Now, now Mott's is being sued, and so just in case, we want to just preface: this is a joke. This is a joke for the NSA agent listening to this. That's a joke.
You're never inviting me on
we,
the podcast again. But I do,
yeah,
I guess as I started working for an AI company, like really got enmeshed in the culture of the AI. And I think it's quite exciting to talk about from like the hype and all the things we can get into. But I definitely feel fatigued from the amount of times I went on a date and someone asked me about AGI timelines, or their entire personality is just talking about AI, especially here in San Francisco more than anywhere else. It's pretty bad. It's pretty
of course, of course. Yeah, I mean, I get it as a man, and so I couldn't imagine what it's like as a very pretty woman in tech. It is what I wouldn't give, what I wouldn't give. All right, so I think this is a good time to wrap this up, and we can move on to our interview here with Sam Hogan. So we're going to go ahead and cross to him now. So today here with Sam Hogan. Now, my guy, founder of Inference.net. You may have actually seen him, well, in the top little right-hand corner of the screen, actually. He's been there since the very, very beginning. Sam has been building software since high school. He's been working on various different kinds of agentic workflows, whatever the fuck you might think of them, or, everybody's got a different definition these days. So I'm actually going to jump straight into this and ask, Sam, what is an agentic workflow to you? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
That's a good question. What is an agentic workflow? I mean, I think it's just something that uses an LLM that's like not a chat. So it's like a part of like a bigger program maybe that's like using an LLM to do something that you can't do with code. That's like my technical answer. I think there's probably like, I don't know, less specific answers you can give. I also think as an industry, we're still kind of figuring out like what is an agent versus what is an agentic workflow. Maybe they're the same thing. Maybe neither of them is really all that useful quite yet.
Yeah, no one actually fucking knows. That's the actual real answer, is that nobody actually knows what this is. Even the guys that build them don't even know what it is. It's gone from something like a Selenium web scraper to like some sort of WebSocket. Now we're just using LLMs. Now we call them AI agents. The terms are changing over and over again. But to get a little more serious about this now, because we're talking about agentic workflows and of course into this current AI hype cycle. So this kind of brings me to Inference.
Yeah.
How are you guys positioning yourselves as Inference? Like, what do you consider to be Inference's position in the market currently? What do you consider to be your guys' position in this current hype cycle?
Yeah, so we started off as a serverless LLM inference API. There's a whole bunch of these serve commodity open source models. So DeepSeek, Llama Series, Quen. Tough business, like very competitive, really bad margins. A lot of companies actually serve inference at a loss. As a loss leader to get people into through the door for other services. And so over the last 6 months, we started training custom LLMs. A lot of our customers right now, they started off, they're spending, they're scaling, they're either, large companies with lots of users or they're startups that are growing really quickly. And they come to a point where they're like, wow, we're spending $50,000 a month on OpenAI and utilization just keeps going up. Like, what are we going to do? They're like, what's a longer term solution? And so we help them train smaller models that are more task specific. They can be run, more cost effectively. They can be run on-prem, run at bigger scale. You don't have to worry about, the GPT-5 router routing you to like the distilled version of GPT-5 that's not as good. You get like a lot more control. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying, I guess we train models now. I guess we're an AGI research.
You're an AGI house. Okay. Yeah. So these guys are actually building God, but they're like the startup building God versus some sort of lab slop shop, as we might even call them.
Yeah.
Is that fair to put it?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of like, it's a mix. We still do some research, but fundamentally it's a mix of like upfront consulting and then long-term hosting.
Sure.
So we do a lot of kind of deep, LLM orchestration and scheduling. And yeah, still very much figuring it out, but we've made a lot of progress over the last 6 months.
Yeah. So I guess if I can try and throw you off your guard a little bit, would you consider the AI cycle right now, right? I mean, like you've been through a fair few cycles in your lifetime, your short lifetime. I mean, he's not that old, but you've built software through sort of like end of the 2010s, right into COVID. Been working in startups all of this time. How do you see this current cycle, right? The current cycle of AI, as opposed to say the ZERP era of 21 or even, pre-COVID, right? How do you see this particular period weighing up against those previous periods in terms of capital? Basically what I'm trying to ask is, do you think we're in a bubble?
I wouldn't say broadly, I wouldn't say we're in a bubble. I think some categories are overfunded. I think like hardware in particular, gets a lot of attention. There's a lot of capital going into building data centers. I think that's great. We talk with a lot of data center providers that still have like unutilized capacity that they're trying to fill. It'll be interesting to see if demand for AI keeps up with the build outs that are going on now. My sense is that it probably will. There might be a bit of a gap, like at some point in the next 18 months as a lot of compute comes online. But I do think that the demand curve will just continue to go up. And you really only need like a few truly breakout apps, like ChatGPT level apps, to make those data centers useful. I still think, it's good to experiment. Like part of having a new industry, like you saw us with the internet and any other kind of like bubble phenomenon, you have to experiment, and that just involves like investing in stuff that seems kind of crazy.
Yeah.
With the optimistic view that maybe that turns into something really big, but that's hard to see ahead of time. And it's good. I think it's good that, we have the venture ecosystem that we do to explore the contours of like the new design space. Cause we don't know what's going to end up being really big. So like, are we in a bubble? I think like a lot of companies will die. I think it's like, in some senses, really easy to raise a pre-seed round, like raise a few $1 million and give yourself some runway to explore a new idea. But the standards for raising like an A round now are higher than they've ever been. And just getting to like $1 or $2 million in revenue isn't going to be enough. Like,
right, the growth curves have come so much further forward, right? It's like 0 to 100 mil ARR in 2 years versus 7 years for your average cloud company or something like that.
Yeah. And I think the valuations of some of like the biggest companies in this space right now, like Cursor doing a secondary at like 20 billion.
Yeah.
I think that's like totally warranted. Those are going to be massive businesses, provide massive value. There's probably a couple other sectors. I think legal is going to be a really big one.
Yeah.
There's the medical AI company, OpenMed. They're just printing cash. So I think we'll start to see AI like eat other parts of the economy, and it's tough to predict ahead of time, like how much it will like absorb.
Totally. So, I mean, you guys might be wondering, like, this is actually an incredibly serious interview for incredibly serious media. It's actually probably the most serious interview that we've had so far. One question I actually wanted to touch on, because the answer you gave is sort of, it's contrary to like a lot of what I hear, right? It's like, I know a lot of, I personally know a lot of researchers that are actually concerned of the overbuilding of data centers. Like, do you see that concern at all? Or do you actually think, like, no, enough compute is going to come online that, this build out will be utilized over time?
Yeah, I think it's all timing. I think that the build outs going on now, I mean, I know for a fact that there are lots of data centers that have underutilized capacity that's online, could be serving workloads, but maybe there's not like an efficient market to bring that capacity online in an effective way. So, there's like compute markets is a whole other interesting thing. But I think like in the long term, there will be demand. Like I don't think there's any question in my mind that there will be a couple more breakout apps that use the compute that's getting brought online in the next 18 months, let's call it. I'm more worried about like in the long run, will there be like, do we have the energy systems to support more data center growth? And this is maybe beyond the next like 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And I think similar to the internet in like in 2000, there was an overbuild of, let's just say like internet infrastructure, like laying cables across the oceans. A lot of those companies died or got rolled up because everybody was like, well, the internet's going to be big. Let's get prepared for it. And then it took a little while for it to actually pick up. And you didn't see, companies like Facebook start until 2004. And then you had the whole kind of, like next wave of big internet companies. Netflix started to grow like crazy, in like the late 2000s. And so maybe AI is kind of similar, where you'll have a lot of these smaller data center build outs get rolled up by a CoreWeave or, some like IRIN in Canada. I definitely can see that happening. I think them staying independent is unlikely in the long run.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I know there's been recent data out of Virginia, right, in which like you probably, and where I'm going with this is sort of like maybe there's some regulation that comes against new data center build out as well, right? It's like, you have the data centers popping up in Virginia and you're seeing massive spikes in electricity. You see electricity costs. For guys like us who really, really love data, that's actually not a problem. But for citizens of Virginia, they may see, they may not see eye to eye with us technology brothers. So no, definitely makes sense. I think that's a good place to actually wrap this up. We've gone from what is an agentic workflow, super serious meeting, into actual serious stuff. Who would have fucking thought? So Sam, thanks for coming on Mots.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, it wouldn't be an episode of Members of Technical Staff without reacting to some of the greatest posts in the history of posts. And of course, this is along the lines of the AI hype cycle, agentic workflows. And so naturally, we're going to be going ahead and starting off with a post from our good friend, Spore. This is Sporadicalia. I always get his name wrong. So, Sporadicalia. What he says is, humans saw this and invented agentic workflows, and it is a picture of an old Mercedes-Benz with 2 glasses of wine, some grapes, and what looks like to be... Look, I want to say, well, it is a coastline, okay? Quite frankly, I think this image, it's sort of hard to tell whether it's AI generated or not. It might actually be South Africa. It actually kind of looks a bit like Cape Town. I don't know. If anybody wants to come in and correct me, go ahead and do so. But this and agentic workflows. I mean, all I can say, being a technology brother, is what I wouldn't give.
Same. I love one of the comments says, imagine thinking climbing the corporate ladder is better than this.
Yeah, exactly. Need to include some agentic workflows in my beautiful romantic like couple glasses of wine in Cape Town or something. Okay, moving on here. We're going to be looking at a post from yet another friend of the show. Again, become a friend of the show and you'll have your incriminating tweets read live. And so we've got Turner Novak, right? So guest of the show last week. He says, how it feels to be on vacation in Italy, earning 2 and 20 while your portfolio companies are pulling multiple all-nighters, clip farming, trying to escape the permanent underclass, building agentic workflows for humanoid robots. Holy shit.
I love this
And
Succession picture. The worst
Yeah.
character, one of the worst characters from Succession.
Wait, is it actually? I've barely watched any movies. The only movie I've seen is like Shrek 2. And so
Yeah, it's like a
didn't know
Nepo
this-
baby who does absolutely nothing with his life but live off of other people's money, which is like incredibly accurate for this.
Okay. Wow. Turner's posts go deep, right? This is what it takes to be a prolific, right? Like just an all-time poster, right? You even have the movie references, which I personally don't have. I've never seen this movie in my life, but I think this is incredibly accurate. I also really, really like how Turner managed to fit basically every single buzz term into one run-on sentence. He's got 2 and 20. He's got multiple all-nighters, right? Referring to the 996 or, something more than 996. Clip farming. He's got the permanent underclass. He's got agentic workflows and he's got humanoid robots. He hit every single one. Crazy.
Every single one. That's impressive. It's impressive to hit every single one in one great tweet.
Yeah, exactly. It makes him a godlike poster. Okay, speaking of godlike posters, we are moving on here to yet another friend, Miranda Nova. And she says, you have 2 years to build muscle and escape being part of the permanent underclass. So it's like this idea, right? The idea in that, in the singularity, right? When a post-work world, the idea that perhaps social capital and big arms matters a little more than actual capital, right? If everybody's on UBI, if everybody's just like the great equalizer might be the techno capital singularity, maybe you want to have a bit of riz. Maybe you want to have some arms. And this is what this is playing on. Of course, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, this seems like you could have written this tweet. Yeah. So we'll be served well in the future then, right?
Hopefully. I can only hope, right? I mean, I've been preparing for this moment for 8 years. Again, still haven't got a girlfriend. Maybe when my arms are bigger, it can actually happen. But we'll see how it goes.
It's kind of like the nerds taking over building AGI, but then the gym bros actually end up coming out on top. Although now it seems like the nerds are the gym bros. I saw someone's Twitter bio the other day. It was like, it said creatine and CUDA.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
You're kind of like mixing archetypes here.
My culture is not their costume, damn it. Please stop with this. Okay, moving on here. I wanted to bring up this post from Rune. Speaking of the Rune timeline and Mott's just being an extrapolation of his timeline, we're going to read his timeline. So we've got Teasel, TSZZL. The American elite hangs out on Twitter. The White House is incredibly online. All the AI labs are incredibly online. What this means is that across the board, the sentiment on Twitter is a top-line metric on par with the S&P for gauging the success of leaders. And of course, we are at this point in the AI hype cycle, which is why I wanted to bring this up, right? We are at the point in which you have the administration not only reading the timeline, not only making policy off of the timeline, but of course getting those that are on the timeline for advice, right? There's like
Yeah.
I mean, we know various people who are on the timeline and are helping make this kind of policy, and it is wild to see. Really is posters in control.
So what do you think on this? You think this is like 100% accurate? This is what's happening right now? This is why everyone is so desperate for, engagement, things like that?
I think so. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily the reason as to why people are obsessed with engagement, right? I mean, I think that, there are reasons, and that is distribution, at least for consumer AI companies, right? There are so many of them. And so it really is a battle for attention. Enterprise, maybe a little bit different, but of course, distribution is king for a lot of them. It's why we need more podcasts. It's why we need more media. We need more billboards, right? Attention really is the king. And so I actually do think that that's probably the main driver. I don't particularly think that there are people spinning up accounts trying to get in front of policymakers. I think there are far better ways of trying to do that. But I think Rune is exactly right here, right? And it's not necessarily a phenomenon just from this year. It has been going on for quite a while, I would say. But it's just it's particularly apt now, just because we have people in our circles that are helping build this policy, which is kind of insane. And last thing, just before we leave this off, I wanted to make an ode to coding at the bar. Of course, this did the rounds on the timeline this past week, and all I want to say is that members of technical staff were early to coding at the bar. That's all I want to say, right? First piece of members of technical staff law that did the rounds on the timeline, and it won't be the last, damn it. So that wraps this up here. Another episode of Members of Technical Staff complete. We will see you once again on the timeline next week.